welcome. This is Briony Rose Smith live in the Forbidden Library, and today it is reading day again! Twice in 1 week. She's trying to get into her niche more. Also, this is a fat book. We read this book for 3 hours on Friday, and we're only 9% of the way through, so evidently we need to read more, or we'll never conquer the mountain that is Pompeii, its life and art. But anyway, hello, welcome everybody. Welcome Local Goober, welcome Nimby, welcome Red Candy Guy, welcome Rahel. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for coming. First things first. Stuff. Hello, Gnome Size Phantom. Sorry I'm late. I just got back from the new Final Destination film. Anyway, time to read about a city that got wiped out by a massive cataclysmic disaster. Yeah! How was the new one? Give me your non-spoiler review. I'm curious. I'm not gonna go see it. I hate those movies. Morbidly curious about those movies, I suppose, is more the way to put it. It's I can't take the, like... What's it? The tension, I guess, of all the false murders that happen and stuff. I can't do it. I can't deal with it. Okay, so we had an exclusive stream this week and we read some SCP. So we read quite a few SCP. So let's caps lock, because I'm going to be writing SCP in capitals a lot. So let's put in the numbers. SCP. I mostly just did these off the thing. So 4, 7, 10. SCP. I would love to tell you what it was. I was just gonna say, please give us a light review. Is it worth it? Yes, we're all somewhat interested in All Size Fan. Fantastic. Best one since the last one. But you'd hate it. It's very tense and extremely gory. So it's wonderful for what it's supposed to be. You should read every Sinner's book's backstories for Limbus kind. Yes, I do have some on the list. Some of them are a bit too big for me, though. I'm not gonna lie. Honglu's, was it? It's like a brick, from what I've heard, and I don't know if I'm ready for that mentally or physically. 380 SCP. But Don Quixote's is on the list. We did a little to-read list here. I need to put Don Quixote's on. I'd like to do Law and Order for Rodian as well. But those are the ones we'll be doing first. We'll get through that list, and then we'll make a new list. That'll be great. 380 at 1501 SCP 49. That's a 29. 4929 SCP 3428. Okay, so those are all the SCPs I read. Which gives us to 261, 262, 263, 264, 265, 266, 267. Wait, no, we didn't get to 267. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, we only read 6. That's not too bad. Did I read anything else this week? What is the list on here? Parliament of Rooks issue 4. I've definitely gotten that one down. Let me just check my bookshelf. 1 second. I'm totally prepared for this stream. Have you noticed? Yeah, issue 4. Seasons, did I put that? Seasons issue 4. Yeah, that's in there. Oh. Cat Who Saved Books is in there. I don't think I read much else this week, which is a bit sad. I'm in the middle of another Percy Jackson book, I can tell you that. But they're getting a bit chunkier now. The Heroes of Olympus books are a bit bigger than the Percy Jackson. The Percy Jackson ones I chomped out in like 2 days, easy. But the Son of Neptune's taken a little while. I read any webtoons? We gotta dig for some numbers. 6 is a good number, but like, we could do better. That's baby numbers. Punch those numbers. not that one. Not quite that one yet. Batman! I read enough Batman! We've read enough, it's been a while since I read it. It'll be in here somewhere, though. Teenage Mercenary. Wayne Family Adventures. Wayne Family Adventures. Oh, you don't have to list them, Goober. But they've already been listed to me many a times. You really don't have to list them for me again. 140 to 180. 140 to 1... Not 180, 160. Hello, the native gamer, welcome. So, short story. Just add a webtoon. And then I just put SCP for this because SCP is various authors. SCP is such a wonderful thing in the world. I have the Wayne Family Adventures like written down in here somewhere. Batman Wayne Family Adventures. There we go. There we go. Did I put SCP as series or standalone? Series. I suppose it is a series. A massive series, but it is kind of a series. A series of numbers. That much is for sure. They're all series, and they're all 2025. Ba-ba-da-ba. So that brings us to 267, which I'm going to update now with... Oh, that's the wrong text box. This is the text box, which brings us to 9,733. We're getting there, slowly but surely. Next week we'll definitely have the next Percy, not Percy. I know the next series of Percy Jackson isn't called Percy Jackson, but I call it the Not Percy series. Because I want to call it the Percy series, but it's not about Percy. It does have Percy in it, but it's not about Percy anymore. It's sometimes about Percy, but sometimes it's not about Percy. The Not Percy series. But anyway, we don't care about Percy today. We care about the public places and buildings in Pompeii. Are you ready to learn more history and facts about the Forum in Pompeii? The place where the Senate, where I imagine their council or Senate would gather. No, it wouldn't be a Senate, because Rome only had one. Did Rome have more than one Senate? Did all cities in Rome have a Senate, or was it just Rome? And then, like, what was the... We'll find out. I guess we'll find out. I don't need to keep going. The Forum. The Forum is usually approached from the west side by the short, steep street leading from Porta Marina. Entering, we find ourselves near the lower end of an oblong open space. At the upper end, which, towards Vesuvius, stands a high platform of masonry with the ruins of a temple, the Temple of Jupiter. These remains of a colonnade are seen on each of the three sides, including the colonnade. The Forum measures 497 feet in length by 156 in breadth. Without it, the dimensions are 400, that would be a leap, 467 and 126 feet. The north side, at the left of the temple, is enclosed by a wall in which there are two openings, one at the end of the colonnade, the other between this and the temple, at the right the right wall bounding the open space has been replaced by a stately commemorative arch, while the end of the colonnade is closed by a wall with a passageway. Another arch, a much simpler construction, stands at the left of the temple. In line with the facade, it cuts off the area cuts off the area between the temple and the colonnade from the rest of the forum. A third arch once stood in a corresponding position at the right. The colonnade is now intersected by a street passable for vehicles. Even the entrances on the north side form no exception. At the left, you descend to the area by several steps at the right, by one only. Yet here the exclusion of carts and wagons was made doubly sure by placing 3 upright stones in the passageway. Oh, like you get those places where you're not allowed cars, you get the bollards. They put bollards in, so wagons can't get in. Only pedestrians could enter the forum, and they, too, could easily be shut out by means of gates in the entrances. The places where the gates swung can still be seen in the pavement, and one of them is shown in paintings. No private houses opened on this area. It was wholly given to the public life of the city, and was surrounded by temples, markets, and buildings devoted to the civic administration. The colonnade was not uniform in character upon all the 3 sides, as will be seen from our plan. On the south side, and on the adjoining portion of the east side as far as Abadanza Street, it was constructed with 2 rows of columns, and had a double depth. On the east side, north of this street, the porticos in front of 4 successive buildings took its place. For the great part of this extent... Sorry, I just remembered a book I wanted to look up. Something about... I'm really sorry, this has really popped into my head randomly. It's a book about a female-led crime gang in London, and I just really want to see. I want to see if it's on Gutenberg, or how many years we have to wait for it to be old enough for me to be able to read on stream, because I really want to read it. I think it was called The 40 Elephants. There's a reference to it in Moon Girl, if you read through that. The 40 Elephants. Alice, Diamond, and the 40 Elephants. That's what I want to read. Alice, Diamond, and the 40 Elephants. Hello, Paper! I'm really sorry. I got distracted from Pompeii for a hot minute. I just need to look up a book and see if I can read it. When is it out? When was it published? Oh, 2025. That's ages ago. Well, I might go to the publishers and be like, hey, this book, Milo Books. I might talk to the publishers on that one. See if I could beg for it. I would love to read about some crime gangs. By all means, give book recommendations. Like there's obviously the chat here, but there's also the suggestions box in Twitch. Before we dive into Pompeii, we dived in. 49% of the way through. For the greater part of its extinct, the colonnade was built in 2 stories. The lower of the Doric, the upper the Ionic order. Briony Rose Smith. I know. This crime is interesting. The only, like I said, I don't know if we'll get to the end of Pompeii. Because it's interesting, but I don't know if it's going to be interesting enough. I would love to get through it, but... The upper gallery was made accessible by 3 stairways, and the southeast and southwest corners of the forum, at the middle of the West Street, on the east side, did not extend beyond Abadanza Street. Diving into Pompeii is not recommended. No, it's not really recommended to dive anywhere that's not water, really. The portico in the front of the first of the 4 buildings referred to, that of Enumachia, contained a double series of columns, one above the other, corresponding in style and dimensions with those of the colonnade, but there was no upper floor. Running back from the interviewing entablature, the arrangement in front of the 4th building and Maliseum was similar. As the remains of the porticos in front of the 2 intervening buildings have wholly disappeared, it is impossible to determine their character. You love A Practical Guide to Evil and Wandering In, but they are quite long. If they're still fun and entertaining, we can still read it. I worry that this might get a little dry at times. I feel like it did last stream when we were talking about building materials. That's definitely not something that interested me. I was interested in I get interested in the people side of things less than the building side of things. Like, I'm interested. The life of Pompeii is definitely something I'm interested in, and the hearing about the colonization and some of the politics and things like that. That's the interesting part to me personally. But we shall go through today. We shall see how it goes. Wandering In is about 12 times longer than the entire Harry Potter books. Holy duck, that's quite a lot. Yes, the life of Pompeii. Yes, the life. There was life, and now there is no life. And I would like to know how that life was. Hello, Boris! Welcome! The area of the forum was paved with rectangular flags of whitish limestone in front of the colonnade, the pavement of which was about 20 inches above that of the open space. A broad step or ledge projected covered a gutter for rainwater. The water found its way into the gutter through semicircular openings in the outer edge of the step. One of the many statues that once adorned the forum, not one has been found. Probably taken. Like, they said a lot of stuff got taken not long after. I'm not much for book recommendations, unfortunately, since I mainly read horror stories, which I know you just love. Yeah, we love some horror. But yeah, that's fine. That's absolutely okay. I mean, like I said, we made a to-read list. We have loads of book recommendations. As may be seen from the pedestals still in place, they were of 3 kinds, and varied greatly in size. First, statues of citizens who had been rendered distinguished services were placed in front of the colonnade on the ledge over the gutter. 4 pedestals that once supported statues of this sort may be seen on the west side. I'd love to know what they did! Have you ever done something of such import of your city that you had a statue made of yourself? The equestrian statues of life size were set up in front of the ledge, these also in honor of dignitaries of the city. So equestrian, you mean they were on horses? On one of the pedestals, the veneering of coloured marble is still preserved, with an inscription showing that the person represented was Quintus Sallustius, Deme Quintennial Deme, patron of the colony. I see. I don't know if I would want a statue preserving my likeness for all eternity. I think that would be a little bit weird. Finally, on the south side, the life-size equestrian statues, which seem at the outset to have been arranged symmetrically, were almost all removed in order to make room for 4 much larger statues, the pedestals of which still remain. These must have represented emperors or members of imperial families. None of them for the... Well, I guess if the gods had their own temples, then I guess they don't need the gods' statues at the forums. The pedestal in the middle, which is in the forum of an arch almost square at the base, is much the oldest. Upon it was probably placed a colossal statue of Augustus. It is incredible that during the long and successful reign of the first emperor, no statue in his honour should have been erected in Pompeii, and this is the most suitable place. The other three pedestals are similar in construction and clearly belong together. The one at the right, two on the plan, supported a colossal equestrian statue. On the left, a colossal standing figure. On the third, further forward, was a smaller equestrian statue. Here stood then Emperor, Empress, and Crown Prince, Claudius, Agrippa, and Nero. So that would be near the end of the Roman Empire, I suppose. But then you got the Roman Empire and Holy Roman Empire were two different things, weren't they? A fifth pedestal for an equestrian statue of the same size as that of Nero is seen further to the north in front of the Temple of Jupiter, while unquestionably later that the time of Augustus, it must on the other hand be older than the pedestals of members of the Claudian family. For aside from himself, no one belonging to Nero's time can be taken into consideration after his death. The form lay in ruins in consequence of the earthquake of the year 63. Who stood here, however, can scarcely be conjectured. Not necessarily an emperor, the younger Drusus, for instance, Tiberius's son, or Germanicus might have been thus honoured, if they had in any way come into relation with the Pompeians. Oh, I love that. That's a mystery. They don't even know what statue stood there, but they know a statue stood there. It could be anything. I think it's interesting that they assumed that it would be God, that it would be emperors and stuff. Like, if it's outside the Jupiter temple, could it not have just been a god statue as well? I don't know. I'm not a historian, but that would be my guess. But if an emperor, it must have been Caligula. Another place was provided for the statue of Tiberius. Caligula would also make sense. In the south side of the arch, at the northeast corner of the forum, are two niches. It is highly probable that the statue of the two oldest sons of Germanicus, Nero and Drusus, probably saying that wrong, were placed in them. A fragment of an inscription referring to the former was found nearby. These became presumptive heirs to the throne after the death of Tiberius's son Drusus in 23 AD, but both afterwards fell victim to the morbid superstition of the emperor and the plots of Sejanus. Nero in 29 AD, Drusus 4 years later. On the top of the arch, an equestrian statue of Tiberius probably stood. That such a statue was placed here seemed clear from analogy. North of this arch was another almost in line with it, at the end of Mercury Street, where it opens into Nola Street. And here the excavators found fragments of a bronze equestrian statue, which were put together and set up in Naples Museum, where this statue represented Caligula or Nero has been a matter of dispute. Oh, I love it when historians dispute. They don't know. We're all just making this stuff up. No one knows what they're doing. No one knows the facts. We just do our best with the evidence we got. There is no decided resemblance to Nero either, but it is quite possible that although as crown prince he had been honoured with a statue in the Forum, the Pompeians thought it best to erect for him as emperor a more imposing monument. Before leaving the area, we may raise the question whether it contained a speaker's platform, like the rostra in Roman Forum. If we have reference to a special structure, probably not. No trace of a separate tribunal has been discovered. The orator who wished to address the people, however, could mount the broad platform in the front of the Temple of Jupiter, on which an altar stood. Before him the audience could gather in the open, on the only side of the Forum free from the colonnade. This place well suited the convenience of both speaker and hearers. It is possible that we should also identify as a tribune the platform in a recess at the southeast corner. So they would have given public addresses from the Temple of Jupiter. That makes sense. On even a cursory inspection, the Forum is seen to lack unity, words I can read, in the details of its plan and in its architecture. The fact soon becomes apparent that it reached its final form only as the result of a long period of development. Its final form. That's a lie. Its true final form is the ruins that it's in now. It will be worthwhile briefly to trace this development, and to note at least the more important changes which followed one another in the course of the centuries. So that's what it would have looked at. North end of the Forum with the Temple of Jupiter restored. So the big horsey would have been... that would have been really imposing. Imagine going under there and you got that big horse guy just staring down at you. Hello. Hello, ant. In the earliest times, the Forum was merely an open square bounded by 4 streets. The proof that this was the original Forum is in part based on the orientation of the Temple of Apollo. The sides of this temple have the same direction as the north-south streets in the northern part of the city, and must have been laid out parallel with a street that once ran between it. The Forum, the temple, is, therefore, older than the colonnade of the Forum, which shows a marked deviation from the line of its axis. The divergence, as may be seen on our plan, was in part concealed by making a difference in the thickness of it. It's kind of really fun to see how they reason out why things are the way they are and whatnot. It's kind of cool. Thickness of the pillars between the court of the temple and the end of the Forum. It is obvious that the colonnade on the west side takes the place of an older street. The south side was probably defined by the prolongation of Abadanza Street towards the southwest. Near the southeast corner, an inscription was found: Vivus Pondius Epidi Philus Questor Porticus Facendus Coravit. Vividus Pompidus, the son of Epidus, the quaestor caused this colonnade to be erected. No clue? That's not how you spell clue. No clue to the date is given, but it must have been before the coming of the Roman colony. For after that time there was no office of quaestor in Pompeii. It must have been before the social war. In those years of tumult, in an extensive colonnade would not have been built. And when the national spirit was so vehemently asserting itself, we should expect to find inscriptions upon public works in the Oscan language, certainly not in Latin. But the use of Latin may very well date from the latter part of the period of alliance with Rome. We may then, with much probability, assign the inscription to the second half of the century BC. Again, the reasoning out. Seeing inscriptions in Latin, be like, well, that must have been after the Romans, really, because, like, they were still talking the Oscan language, and even, like, just after the Romans, not so much, because they were still trying to protect their language and their culture from the Romans at that point, so if there was any kind of, like, rebellious scrap, then Kevlar's a member. 0.25 pregnancies. Well done, Kevlar. The baby's the size of a raspberry. Congrats on being a proud mother of a raspberry. Remains of the colonnade of Pompeii are still to be seen on the south side, on the adjoining part of the East Stride. Extending just across Abadanza Street, traces of it are found also on the west side, where it was afterward replaced by a new structure. On the east side, north of Abadanza Street, no traces remain. The appearance of this part of the Forum was entirely changed when the four buildings, K, L, M, and N, with their porticos were erected, but we can hardly doubt that the occasional colonnade extended here also. Our illustration also shows the arrangement of the Doric columns in the lower story. Of the iconic columns above, only scantily fragments have been recovered. The appearance of the whole may be suggested by our restoration. Yeah, we only wish the best for your raspberry, and a smoothie is not the way to go. They'll destroy themselves. In style and construction, this we wish your raspberry to be a wonderful cake topper. In style and construction, this colonnade belongs to the tougher period, while the forms are not those of the classical period. They nevertheless manifest Greek feeling. Manifesting Greek vibes. This is one word of modern language. Manifest those Greek vibes, bro. The low ratio in the proportions of the Doric columns, of which the height is equal to 5 diameters. Where was I? You completely distracted me about that cake topping. Diameters. That was the word I just read. There it is. Well accords with their use as support for an upper gallery. Elsewhere in pre-Roman Pompeii, more slender proportions are preferred, even for the Doric style. The shaft is well shaped, with a moderate swelling. Manifesting fertile vibes. Don't say that. That's awful. What? Only the upper part is fluted, as the sharp edges of the fluting near the bottom might easily be marred. The divisions of the surface on the lower third of the shaft were left flat. The architrave is relatively low, the result of an interesting peculiarity in the method of construction. Blocks of tufa long enough to span the intercolumnizations were too weak to sustain the weight of the rest of the entablature. To meet this difficulty, a line of thick planks was placed in old Italic fashion above the capitals of the columns, and on these were laid short, tougher blocks. Thus, in our illustration, while the upper of the two bands of the archetypa. Also, you spelled my name wrong. I don't have two Y's in my name. That's the Welsh way of spelling it. I got the old English spelling of Briony. I ain't Welsh. Thus, our illustration, while the modern two bands are of stone, the lower shows the modern timber supplied in the place of the ancient. Hello, Samurai Jack! It has been a while. Welcome. And that the planks were in relatively no thicker than has been assumed in the reconstruction is proved beyond question by the latter colonnade on the west side, which, although entirely of stone, corresponds throughout in its proportions with the older one. The architrave is equally narrow, and is likewise divided into two parts. So, a remnant of the colonnade of Pompeii at the south end of the forum. So that's what this is. That's what those pretty columns are. Those are the shafts that are left flat at the bottom, you'll see. Good day to you indeed. This explanation is curiously confirmed by an architectural painting on the garden wall of one of the finest houses of the Tupper period, the House of the Faun. Here we find pilasters and entablature, except the architrave painted white. Architrave? But the architrave is painted in two bands, of which the lower is yellow, as if to represent wood. Nothing would have been easier than to leave the architrave moulded in stucco, of one colour, as if it were of one material, but specific effort was made apparently to indicate the appearance of a lower division of timber. From this we may infer that an actual construction, no pains were taken to conceal the lack of uniformity in structural materials by laying a coat of white or coloured stucco over wood and stone alike. On the contrary, the difference was not only recognisable in the decoration, but even accentuated, as the timber, whether retaining its original colour or painted with a suitable tint, presented a marked contrast with the stone, the surface of which was covered with white stucco. If the strip of timber in the architrave had been perceptibly thicker than that of the stone above it, the effect would not have been good. As the earlier Greek polychrome decoration was now no longer in vogue, the stripe of colour above the capitals made a pleasing variation from the prevailing whiteness of the structure. So the Greeks liked a bit of colour in their stuff, and then the Romans came along and appleified everything. Because you know, I had when I was in college, everyone had a bloody Mac. Everyone. They were on a bloody computer science course. They had to have like a Windows desktop set up on their Macs to actually do our work, because we physically could not do it on a Mac. But for some reason they all still liked their Macs like weirdos, and I was just surrounded on a table with everyone with these boring ass grey Macs. So I very specifically, when I needed a new laptop, bought one that was bright blue. Because I was like, this table needs a splash of colour. Excuse me while I go get something colourful, because this table is too grey and I hate it. So yes, the Romans were the apple of architecture. It's only weird if you're if you're doing a course where you need Windows, but for some reason you're still using a Mac. And it infected. It was like a virus. Drag queen laptop. Not quite, but it was bright blue, and I put some stickers on it too, just because it needed it. It needed to be colorful and pretty, otherwise everyone would be sad. That's fair. It was strange. It was a strange time in life. The Beliska at the southwest corner and the Temple of Jupiter both conform to the same variation from the direction of the early north and south street that we have noticed in the case of the colonnade of Pompeii. They belong, therefore, on the same remodelling of the Forum. It is quite possible that the erection of the temple, by limiting the area of the Forum on the north side, caused its extension towards the south beyond the earlier boundary. Originally, the temple was isolated, the north end of the Forum on either side being left open. Later, but still in the time of the Republic, a high boundary wall with passageways was built on both sides of it. Later still, the two arches were erected in line with the facade afterwards in the time of Tiberius. The wall at the right of the temple was replaced by a commemorative arch, and the smaller arch near the facade at the right was removed in order that there might be an unimpeded view of the Great Arch from the area. Windows isn't what it used to be. That is true. Especially with a lot of like the new shovelware-y stuff we keep getting on it. It is very true. But I just can't be arsed trying to learn Linux. Power to you if you want to learn how to use Linux, but I know I don't have the energy for it. The colonnade of Pompeii may have stood for more than a century. The necessity of making thoroughgoing repairs no doubt became urgent. In the meantime, however, the taste of the Pompeians had undergone a change, and instead of repairing the old colonnade, they began to replace it by a new one, a part of which showing in Fig 15, better material, the whitish limestone used, and the construction was more substantial. The blocks of the entablature were fitted together so as to form a flat arch. Through the new colonnade followed closely the proportions of the old, effective details such as the fluting of the columns and the triglyphs with the gorte underneath were omitted. The refined sense of form characteristics of the earlier time were no longer manifest. All is coarse and inartistic. The swelling on the shaft of the columns, for example, being carried too high. Oh, I see. So they're just generally a bit more plain. That's a bit sad. They just kinda... They're just like... We just need to stick a column here. Stop making them so pretty. Just stick a column there. We'll do that. The new colonnade had a second story of the Ionic order, of the columns which, though not of the entablature, considerable fragments have been found. Howdy, howdy! You just be lurking today? That's fine. Have a wonderful lurk. The stylobate on which the columns rested was renewed in limestone, and about the same time the forum was paved, and the ledge over the gutter was laid with flags of the same material. This second remodelling of the Forum commenced in the early years of the Empire, the pavement having been laid before the pedestal of the monument to Augustus was built. It was never carried to completion. On the west side of the new colonnade was almost finished when the earthquake of the year 63 threw it nearly all down. At the time of the eruption, only the columns at the south end of this side, which had safely passed through the earthquake, were still standing with their entablature. They are shown in Fig 15. Fig 15. The area was then strewn with blocks which the stonecutters were engaged in making ready for the rebuilding. The Forum of Pompeii, as of other ancient cities, was first of all marketplace. Early in the morning, the country folk gathered here with the products of the farm. Here all day long tradespeople of every sort exhibited their wares. In later times, the pressure of business led to the erection of separate buildings around the Forum to relieve the congestion. Such were the Malaseum, used as a provision market, the Emuncia building erected to accommodate the clothing trade, the Balisca, and the market house west of the Temple of Jupiter, devoted to other branches of trade. Yet, in a literal sense, the Forum always remained the business centre of the city. Oh, so the Forum isn't a council house, it's a place to trade. It served too as the favourite promenade and lounging place, where men met to discuss matters of mutual interest. So like a pub? The Forum pub? Or to indulge in gossip. Yes, very much the pub. Here idlers loitered and piltered busier men with questions regarding public affairs. Market makers and dealers came together to talk over and settle points of difference, and young people pursued their romantic adventures. He can best form an idea of this building's ceaseless, varied activity. Who knows what the Piazza means in the life of a modern Italian city, and stops to consider how much has been taken from the life of the Pisa, not actual pizza, I assume. Pisa's like a square, isn't it? Like a town square kind of thing. By the cafes and similar places of resort. Modern squares, moreover, are usually not provided, as were the ancient, with inviting colonnades. Pizza! It's like the what's up, but pizza! Affording protection against both sun and rain. In the life of the Forum seemed so interesting to one of the citizens of Pompeii that he devoted to the portrayal of it a series of paintings on the wall of a room. Pizza! The pictures are light and sketchy, but they give a vivid representation of ancient life in a city. First, in front of the equestrian statues, near the colonnade, we see dealers of every kind and description. Hey, don't cook the pizza in the Pompeii. I'm no fan. The pizza! There sits a seller of copper vessels and iron utensils, so lost in thought that a friend is calling his attention to a possible purchaser who is coming up next. Next, 2 shoemakers, one waiting on a woman, another on men, then 2 cloth dealers. Further on, a man selling portions of warm food from a kettle. Then we see a woman with fruit and vegetables, and a man selling bread. Another dealer in utensils is engaged in eager bargaining, while his son, squatting on the ground, mends a pot. And I take it this is one of the pictures. Seen in the Forum, in the foreground, at the left, dealer with utensils. At the right, shoemaker waiting on the 4 ladies. Well, here you go. That's how busy the forum would have been. So it's like a little marketplace. You needed something. Oh, I'm just gonna go pop to the forum for a minute. I'm just gonna go nose around the forum today. That's the kind of stuff I like. That's the kind of life I wanted to hear about. What do ancient people do on their day-to-day? What do they look like without screens and internet? They went out to the forum, they did. The scenes now change. A man sitting with a writing tablet and stylus listens closely to the words of another who stands nearby. He reminds us of the scribes who, under the portico of the theatre of San Carlo in Naples, writes letters for those that have been denied the privilege of an education. Then comes men, wearing tunics, engaged in some sort of transaction, in the course of which they seem to pass judgment on the contents of bottles which they hold in their hands. Their business perhaps involves testing of wine. Beyond these, some men are taking a walk. A woman is giving alms to a beggar. And 2 children play hide and seek around a column. The following scene is not easy to understand, but apparently has reference to some legal process. A woman leads a little girl with a small tablet before her breast into the presence of 2 seated men who wear the toga. Interesting. Philosophers were basically ancient VTuber. Oh yeah, I totally Oshi Plato. Yeah! Can't believe Socrates graduated. Can't believe it. So they say funny things and then I don't know how to handle this knowledge. Humanity never changes. They had Oshis too. They just didn't have them as anime girls. It makes sense. Their Oshi could be that guy who brings in like the best fucking meat from the town over. Or anything like that. Or that artist. The guy who's drawing all these pictures that are getting described to us. That could have been someone's Oshi too. Briony would be Plato's Oshi. Thank you for being a member so long, Boris. Appreciate it. I would be honored to be Plato's Oshi. In the next scene, Fig 17, this one. Now I have to figure out where the fudge I was. I clicked things and now I don't know where I clicked things. Pizza! Here you go. In the next scene, Fig 17, 4 men are reading a notice posted on a long board, which is fastened to the pedestals of 3 equestrian statues. So at least I know I'm interpreting equestrian statues correctly, because they're horsey statues. Statues with horses. The sketchy character of the... Oh, that yawn stuck up on me. Oh. The sketchy character of the painting is especially obvious in the representation of the horses, which are nevertheless lifelike. It is also interesting to note that the heads of the men in these scenes are uncovered in stormy weather, pointed hoods. Shown in a tavern scene. Where is it? I clicked it and then it didn't show me the tavern scene, which is sad. Never accept horse statue gifts. Why? Is there a superstition? But I thought you shouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth. Something about tavern scene. Oh, it went back to here. That's very confusing. Were sometimes worn. The festoons suggest trimming of the colonnade for some festival or occasion. So this thing. The last scene is from school life. A pupil is to receive a flogging. Corporal punishment. He is mounted on the back of his schoolmates while the other holds him by the legs. Oh yeah, Trojan horse, Kevlar. I don't feel very smart right now. But that's okay. We don't need to feel smart. Smart's overrated, you know? Overrated. Intelligence stat is overrated. Charisma all the way. A slave is about to lay on the lash, and the teacher stands nearby with an air of composure. It would not be safe to infer from this, however, that there was a school in the forum. The columns in the scene are different from those in the others, and are further apart. Possibly a part of the small portico north of the court of the Temple of Apollo was at the time let to a schoolmaster. The VTuber way, indubitably. Head empty life. Yeah! Dump stat intelligence is the best way to go. Although I do feel like I'm gaining intelligence from these books. I hope I am. But I don't know whether it's sticking. Because I wrote down all those SCPs when I was doing my thing. And I wanted to tell you what each one was, but I didn't remember. The only SCP I remember reading on Thursday was one about a right-wing politician who commissioned some posters to beat his left-wing rival. And anyone who looked at the posters forgot the concept of left. So most people didn't make it to the polling stations on voting day because they would have had to take a left turn. And then he lost because he was on the left of the ballot and people had no concept of left, so they voted for the guy on the right. It was very silly. The most important religious festivals were celebrated in the Forum. Here, naturally, festival honours were paid to the highest of the gods. The whole area was enclosed by the colonnade, was the court of his temple. But we learn from an inscription mentioned below that celebrations were held here in honour of Apollo also, whose temple adjoined the Forum, and was, at times first, even more closely connected with it than later times. Virtuous informs us that in Greek towns, the marketplace, agora, was laid out in the Forum, in the form of a square, a statement which is not confirmed by modern excavations, but that in the cities of Italy, on account of the gladiatorial combats, the Forum should have been an oblong shape, the breadth between 2/3 of the length. The purpose in giving a lengthened form to the Forum, as also to the amphitheatre, was no doubt to secure at the middle of the sides a greater number of good seats, from which a spectacle could be witnessed. In the Pompeian Forum, as many as may be seen from the dimensions given at the beginning of this chapter, the breadth is less than 1/3 of the length. However, there can be little doubt that gladiatorial expeditions were frequently held here before the building of the amphitheatre, which dates from the early years of the Roman colony. After this time, the Forum was still used for games and contests of a less dangerous character. The epitaph of a certain A. Clodius Fallacis, which is now lost, but was copied by a scholar in the 17th century, tells us at length how in his first and again his second derivative he was demiver for the third time. Ah, yes. In connection with the Festival of Apollo, he not only gave gladiatorial exhibitions in the amphitheatre, but also provided bullfights and other spectacles, as well as musical entertainments and pantomimes in the Forum. Did he organise those, or did he give them? If he gave them, he's a talented man. Speaking of the Forum as a place for gladiatorial combats, Virtuous adds that the spaces between the columns should be wide, that the view of the spectators might be as little possible impeded, and that the upper story of the colonnade should be arranged with reference to the collection of an admission fee. The latter suggestion is of special interest, as we know from other sources at public games certain places were reserved for officials and for the friends of him who gave the spectacle. Others were free to the public, while for still others an admission fee was charged. If the expedition was held in the market, with lower and upper colonnades, the former would have been open to the people, the latter in part reserved, in part accessible, on payment of the price of admission. It would be interesting to know whether, on such occasions at Pompeii, the gates of the Forum itself were shut, so that admission even to the free space could be regulated. Perhaps they were in earlier times, as at Rome slaves were forbidden to witness the games. However, Cicero speaks of this time-honoured regulation in his day already a thing of the past, and so in Roman Pompeii the gates of the Forum may have remained open even on days of the games. Their most important use was probably in connection with the voting. The Forum had to take part also in the spectacles which were not presented there. We are safe in assuming that, at least in the earlier times, whenever a gladiatorial combat was given in the amphitheatre or a play in the theatre, the city officials, excluding especially the official providing the entertainment, formed in procession with their retinue and proceeded in festal attire to the place of amusement. These processions would scarcely have formed anywhere else than in the Forum, and thence they must have started out. So could you imagine every time there's a new play or something in your town that all the politicians get together, dress up in their finery and have a little parade from the town hall to wherever the show is? The fact that the Forum was not accessible for vehicles suggests a significant point of difference between the festal processions of the colony to those of the capital. In latter, vehicles had prominent place. Thus, at Rome, the official who gave the games in the circus entered the edifice with his retinue in chariots in the imposing circus parade, Pompa Sedensis, and a similar usage prevailed in case of other processions. Priests, too, and priestesses were on many occasions allowed to ride, but even in Rome, carriages were always considered a matter of luxury, and the municipal regulations promulgated by Caesar prohibited the use of vehicles except those required for religious and civic processions on the streets of the city from sunrise till the 10th hour, that is, till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He made sure that people weren't doing it. I presume it'd be doubly humiliating in that case if the play sucked. It would. God, there would be a lot of, pressure on the people running the play and the actors and stuff, wouldn't there? That'd be so annoying, trying to get home after picking up some meat and veggies from the market, and the mayor and their friends are parading to the play, and you have to wait to cross the road. That would be annoying. And it would happen happen like every other week as well. It'd be terrible. Like, God, they're doing it again. Ugh. In Pompeii, and without a doubt also in other cities of Italy and the provinces, the closing of the forum to vehicles made it necessary that religious and other processions should proceed on foot. We have no evidence of any exception to this rule. We ought perhaps to recognise it in it one of these devices by means of which Rome maintained a position of dignified superiority over the provincial towns. To her processions was also allowed an element of display, which to theirs was denied. It was not permitted to name the two chief executive officers of municipality consuls, though their functions within limits corresponded with those of the consuls at Rome, nor could the city be called a senate, though the Roman writers did not hesitate to apply the term to corresponding bodies in states and cities outside of Rome. Aha! This was the question I had before of whether it was a senate if it was outside of Rome. So it was a senate, technically, but they didn't like them using the word senate outside of Rome because Rome had to be special. Makes sense. For like reasons, it would seem that on public occasions, officials and priests of the provincial towns were not permitted, as were those in Rome, to ride. Was this humiliating restriction laid upon the Pomeranians when the Roman colony came, or previously when the city was, in name, the ally of Rome, but in reality already subject? The evidence is almost conclusive for the latter alternative, for the colonnade of Pompeius, which, as we have seen, was erected in the period of autonomy, left no entrance for vehicles, though in other ways it added greatly to the attractiveness and convenience of the forum as a place for civic and religious celebrations. No record of events has survived to help us form a picture of the forum as the seat of deliberate and judicial functions. The centre of the city's political life, yet stirring scenes present themselves to the imagination as we recall critical periods of the history of the city. In the Forum, about 400 BC, the valiant Samnite mountaineers, having taken the city by storm, assembled and established their civic organisation. Here, in later times, without a doubt, amid conflicts similar to those at Rome, the policy was put to the test and underwent transformation. Fierce enough the strifes may have been during the Samnite Wars, and again in the time of Hannibal, after the Battle of Cannae, when the aristocrats who favoured Rome contended with the national party for the mastery. Here on the platform in front of the Temple of Jupiter, the leaders of the national party stood in 90 BC with the flaming words roused the people to revolt, to join the movement which, starting at Asculum, had spread like wildfire over southern Italy. Then 10 years of bloody war, siege, campaigns, surrender, and again the scenes changes. Roman soldiers stand thick in serrated ranks upon the area. They are the veterans of Sulla, an officer bearing a civil commission. The nephew of the dictator appears before them. Standing in front of the Temple of Jupiter, he makes a proclamation regarding the founding and administration of the colony. The citizens crowd back timidly into the colonnade. Many of the best of the Pompeians have fallen in battle. Of the rest, a part at least will be dispossessed of house and home, to make room for the intruders, whose arrogance they will be compelled submissively to endure. That's okay, bye-bye. Blech. This is the last tragic act in the Pompeian Forum. After this time, there will be disputes regarding rights of the old residents and the colonists. Public questions of many kinds will call for settlement. The elections will come each year, and the ardent southern temperament may assert itself in violent scenes. Yet all these disturbances will be only as the ripples on the surface. The depths will remain undisturbed. The life of Pompeii has become an integral part of the life of the Roman world. So now we're going to talk about specifically the Temple of Jupiter. The Forum was to the ancient city what the atrium was to the early Italic house. It was used for every purpose for which a special place was not provided elsewhere, and as sleeping rooms, dining rooms, and storehouses were grouped about the atrium and opened into it, so around the Forum lay the efficies which served the requirements of the public life. The most important temples, the municipal buildings, the market houses, or exchanges for different branches of business. 3 temples adjoined the Forum at Pompeii. In addition, there was a sanctuary in the city Lares, and the temple of Venus Pompeian and Fortuna Augusta were but a short distance away. These religious edifices are representative of the different periods in history of the city. In the very early times, the Oscans of Pompeii received from the Greeks who had settled on the coast the cult of Apollo, and built for the Hellenic god a large fine temple adjoining the Forum on the west side. So they are originally Apollo stands. Several centuries later, the divinities of the capital, Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva, were enthroned in the temple that on the north side towered above the area. On the east or right side followed, in Roman times, the edifices erected for worship of the emperors. The oldest is the unroofed building with a broad, open front, dedicated to Lares of the city and to Genius of Augustus. Further north, in the Genius of Augustus. I totally read that right. I just assumed it was a name. I don't know why. Further north, in the first block at the right beyond the Forum, is the Temple of Fortuna Augusta, the goddess who guarded the fortunes of Augustus, erected in 3 BC. A chapel for the worship of Claudius and his family was placed in the Maleseum. This seems to have sufficed also for the worship of Nero. After Nero's death, and after the brief civil war, a temple was built close to the shrine of the Lares in honor of Vespasian, the restorer of peace, the new Augustus. This was the last temple erected in Pompeii. It was not entirely finished at the time of the eruption. I feel like being named Genius is just putting too much pressure on a kid. It would. I just know that, like, to me, I thought it was like Gnaeus, because Nero's dad, I think, was called Gnaeus. Gnaeus. And for some reason, I thought that's what that said. Even though it clearly says Genius. 3 buildings at the south end of the Forum were used for city offices. They were much alike, each containing a single large hall. They were seemingly built in the early years of the empire, and repaired after the earthquake of the year 63. There is also a structure at the southeast corner, south of Abonanza Street, which we may identify as the voting place. The Comitium at the northwest corner was apparently the city treasury, built in the latest years of Pompeii, perhaps on the side of an earlier structure of the same kind. Worst part about being called genius is that the kid grows up thinking if his success is due to a trait out of their control. So if they actually are a genius, but they're just like, am I? Do I deserve this? Oh god. How to mess up a kid in one fell swoop. At a comparatively early period, the area was found to be too small for the increasing volume of business, and the demand for roofed space made itself felt. In the 2nd century BC, the large and splendid Blisca served the double purpose of a court, and an exchange was built at the southwest corner. Diagonally opposite, near the Temple of Jupiter, a provision market, the Maliseum, was constructed, this also at an earlier date. It was entirely rebuilt in the time of the Empire, perhaps in the region of Claudius. Previous to this rebuilding, the emperors Emucia had erected an exchange for the fullers on the same side of the Forum, further south. On the west side, from pre-Roman times, stood a small colonnade in 2 stories, with its rear against the rear of the colonnade. On the north side of the court of the Temple of Apollo, only the 1st story of the Doric order has been preserved. Possibly this structure and the small open space in front were used as a market. Later, in the imperial period, shops were built upon the open space, and the colonnade was made over into closed rooms, the purpose of which, except in the case of one, is unknown. In the last years of the city, a large market building was erected between this small place and the Forum. It was connected both with the city treasury and with latrina. Go to the market, it's next to the toilet. Not a joke. Kids being called smart tend to give up easier, but try hard enough to get good grades, but working hard makes them stubborn. But they only try when they feel like it. Ugh. I got called smart when I was younger. Could you tell? It's that burnt out gifted kid syndrome that a lot of people seem to have. And because they got told they were good at things as a kid, when they're not good at things as an adult, they don't want to do it anymore. Burnt out gifted kids, la 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 la. The Temple of Jupiter dominates the Forum, and more than any other structure, gives it character. As we have seen, its orientation accords with that of the colonnade of Pompeius. It probably dates from the pre-Roman period, the columns being of tufa covered with white stucco. The earthquake of the year 63 left the temple in ruins, and at the time of the eruption, the work of rebuilding had not yet commenced. In the meantime, it was used as a workshop for stonecutters. The Journal of the Excavators reports the finding here of the torso of a colossal structure, out of which a smaller statue was being carved. A place for worship of the divinities of the temple must temporarily have been provided elsewhere. Burnt out gifted kid to VTuber pipeline is almost as prominent as theatre kids about to VTuber. Not wrong. I hit the point early, but refocused. and focused on doing well instead of excelling. That's the key, Boris. That's the key. You just gotta do well. You don't have to do great. You don't even have to do well. You just gotta do. Just gotta do. Make do. Have fun. Don't matter if it looks terrible. I'm crocheting a duck right now. And you know, some of my crochets look really good. But this duck doesn't. Every time I try and make a round ball in crochet, I make it looks more like a lemon, and this duck's gonna look really weird, but I don't care. I don't care. I had fun making it, and that's all that matters. Rant over. The Temple of Jupiter dominates the forum, and I just read that bit, didn't I? Provided elsewhere. Yes. Next page. Lemon duck. I'll take a picture when I'm done. I've done all the bits. I just have to stitch them together now. But I'll make sure there's a picture in the Discord so you can see lemon duck. The temple stands on a podium 10 Roman feet high, and including the steps, 125 Roman feet long. Nearly a half of the whole length is given to the cella. The other half, a little more than 2/3, is occupied by the portico, leaving about 1/3, 20 Roman feet, for steps. The pediment was sustained by 6 Corinthian columns, about 28 feet high. This arrangement, a deep portico in the front of the cella, is Etruscan. Though the canon of Virtuous that in Etruscan temples the depth of the portico should equal that of the cella is violated. The high podium also, with steps in front, is characteristic of Etruscan, or at least of early Italic religious architecture. On the other hand, the architectural forms of the superstructure are Greek, and these in turn have their influence upon the plan. Their intercolumniations are not wide, as the Tuscan style with its wooden architrave, but narrower, as in the Greek orders. Virtuous speaks of temples such as this, in which Greek and Etruscan elements are united. At the end of his directions for the building of temples, they are a development of Roman architecture. Oh, so this temples are like a nice little smooch. Has got a few different architectural styles all smooching together. The arrangement of the steps is peculiar. Above is a series of long steps reaching nearly across the front. Below are 2 narrow flights nearly the sides, and between them is projecting front of the podium used as a tribune, which has already been mentioned. So this is the Temple of Jupiter ruin. That an altar stood at the middle of this platform is proved by a relief in the representation of the north side of the forum, found on the base of a chapel of the Lares, in the house of the wealthy Pomian L. Caelius Ginticus. At the left we see the arch near the facade, and a strip of wall connecting it with the temple. Next, a corner of the platform with an equestrian statue. Then a flight of steps and the front of the platform, which an altar at the middle. Finally, the other flight of steps and another equestrian statue in a position corresponding with that of the first. The columns shown in the relief do not agree in number or style with those of the facade of the temple, but such inaccuracies are common in ancient representations of buildings, and there can be no doubt that the Temple of Jupiter is represented. The relief has, in fact, been used in making our restoration of the arch at the left. Nice. In both the portico and the cellar, no doubt, had a coffered ceiling just in front of the doorway, which was 15 Roman feet wide, are the large stones with holes for the pivots on which the massive doors swung. The doors here were not placed in the doorway, but in front of it, and were besides somewhat larger, so that the effect was rendered more imposing when they were shut. The ornamentation of the cellar was especially rich. A row of iconic columns about 15 feet high stood in front of each of the longer sides. The entablature above them probably served as a base for a similar row of Corinthian columns, the entablature of which in turn supported the ceiling. On the intermediate entablature between the columns of the upper series, statues and votive offerings were doubtless placed. The floor about the sides was covered with white mosaic, of which scanty remains have been found. The marble pavement of the centre has wholly disappeared. A section of the wall decorated in second Pomeranian, I keep wanting to say Pomeranian, Pomeranian style is shown here. We noticed here the characteristic elements, imitation of marble veneering with large red central panels and a cornice above. The base with its simple dividing lines upon a black ground was painted over in the third style. Originally, it must have been more suggestive of real construction, with a narrow painted border along the upper edge. Against the rear wall of the cellar stands a large pedestal, 3 times long as is broad. It was originally divided by 4 pilasters, 1 at the corner and 2 on the front between them, into 3 parts. Later, the pilasters and the entablature over them were removed, and the whole was covered with marble veneering. Inside were 3 small rooms, entered by separate doors from the cellar. The pedestal was thus built for 3 images. 3 divinities were worshipped here. So it's not quite a temple of Jupiter. Jupiter had to share his temple. I don't think he'd be very happy with that. I mean, if the other one was Juno, then that's his wife. So, I mean, he has to share it with his wife whether he likes it or not. But I don't... Minerva. Who's Minerva? I don't remember who Minerva is. And in the little chambers underneath were perhaps kept trappings with which on festival occasions the images were decked. A head of Jupiter, of which we shall speak later, was found in the cellar, as was also an inscription of the year 37 AD, containing a dedication to Jupiter Optimus Maximus. Jupiter Optimus Prime. The ruling deity of the capital at Rome. It is thus proved beyond question that Capitoline Jupiter was worshipped here, and it will not be difficult to ascertain what the other divinities shared with him the honours of the temple. As the Roman colonies strove in all things to be Roman in miniature, each thought it necessary to have a Capitolinium. Jupiter Optimus Pride. Minerva, wisdom, justice, law, arts, trade. Oh, she was the Athena. Ah, that makes sense. Thank you, paper. But what if someone traveled to Germania and saw Pomeranians and wanted to build buildings in that fashion? Pomeranians. well, then we'd have cute Pomeranian buildings, and it would be glorious! For the glory of Pomeranians! A temple of worship of the gods of the Roman capital, Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva. And this naturally became the most important temple in the city. That the worship of the three divinities was established at Pompeii is evident from the discovery of three images representing them. The little temple conjecturally assigned Zeus Melitius. These are poor images of terracotta, and the temple itself was altogether unworthy to be a place of worship for the great gods that shaped the destinies of Rome. We are warranted in the conclusion that the temple of Zeus Melitius was used temporarily for the worship of the three divinities, and the large temple till the latter could be rebuilt, and that Juno and Minerva stood on the great pedestal besides the king of the gods. I thought Pomeranians were French dogs. Yeah, that's very interesting. German and Poland dogs. They are, in fact, not Pompeians. It seems strange that the Pomeranians should have erected a temple to the gods of the capital in the pre-Roman period. It must be remembered, however, that the worship of the three divinities was by no means limited to Rome and her colonies. The Etruscans and Servius forms us in his commentary on Virgil, though that a city was not properly founded unless it contained sanctuaries of Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva. Virtuosus also, in its directions for laying out a city, makes the general statement that the most prominent site should be set aside for the temples of the same divinities. If we consider further that the opposition of the Italians to Rome found impression only in the social war, and the previously that they had looked upon the attainment of Roman citizens as the highest object of ambition, the gradual adoption of Roman customs at Pompeii, and the erection of a temple to the Capitoline divinities are seen to be less remarkable. The building of such a temple was a natural expression of political aspirations. It was in complete harmony with the use of Latin in the description of the Pompeius. So that's interesting. So the Romans kind of preceded themselves, really. A lot of places were already kind of adopting a lot of Roman ways before the Romans even kind of came in, because their influence had just gone that far. That's pretty cool. He is the storm that is approaching, provoking Black's cousin Emery Sean. You can't just start that song and not expect some singing. There is, however, another possibility that may be stated. The remodelling of the Forum was certainly commenced in the pre-Roman period, but it is not impossible that the work was interrupted by the breaking out of the social war, and that the colonists completed it, dedicating the temple to the gods of the capital. So maybe it wasn't that. Maybe it was just that it didn't quite finish before, like, it started before the Romans, and then the Romans came in and finished it off, so they took it for what they wanted. Soft power at work, yes. Interesting stuff. Dedicating the temple to the gods of the capital. The use of several brick-shaped blocks of stone, such blocks are not found in other buildings of pre-Roman time, the lack of any trace of wall decoration of the first style, the form of the egg and dart moulding on the capitalists of the iconic columns in the cellar, and the correspondence of certain dimensions with Roman scale of measurements may be alleged in favour of this hypothesis. The evidence at present does not warrant a positive decision against it. And again, the fun of history of we don't actually know, but this is our best guess. The fact that we have a Capitolium may explain the special prominence of the altar in front, which might just as well have been placed in the area of the Forum at the foot of the steps. In Rome, the Capitol lay upon a summit of a hill. Perhaps the aim in this case was to place not only the temple but also the altar upon an elevation, so that here, as there, the priest should go up to offer sacrifice. The podium of the temple contains vaulted rooms, which can be entered from the Forum through a narrow door on the east side. Their use is unknown. We are reminded of the Temple of Saturn in the Forum at Rome, the podium of which served as a treasury, aerium. The vaults fassive may have been used, oh hey Zeus, as a place of safekeeping for treasure, or for furniture of the temple, or for discarded votive offerings. Bust of Zeus from Tricoli, now in the Vatican Museum. The beautiful head of Jupiter found in the cellar deserves more than a passing mention. In order to appreciate its character, we may view it in contrast with this particular head, with which it is closely related. In both heads we feel the lack of that majestic simplicity that is ineffable with godlike calm, which rested on the features of Zeus of Phidias. Here man has much more obviously made God in his own image. The face shows less of the ideal and more of a human energy and passion. It is not for us to decide whether the Octrilli mask is from the school of Praxiteles, or shows more of the influence of Lysippus. It is sufficient here to note that the type was developed in the second half of the 4th century BC, the century after Phidias. The similarity between these two examples of the type is apparent at first glance. The shape of the two heads is in general the same, and there is the same profusion of hair and beard, symbolic of power, but the differences in detail are striking. The Otricoli Zeus, the particular shape of the forehead, prominent in the middle up to the roots of the hair, and retreating at the sides, seems to suggest not so much the power of a world-encompassing and lofty intellect, as absorption in great unfathomable thoughts. In the lines of the massive face, irresistible force of will is revealed, and the capacity of fierce passion lurks beneath the projecting lower part of the forehead, and uneven brows, threatening like a thundercloud. But for the moment all is deep repose, and the lids seem partly closed that look downwards, as if not concerned with seeing. The sculptor has conceived of Zeus as the occult power of nature, alike the origin and law of all things, or as personification of the heavens veiled by impenetrable mists. So this is the actual one in Pompeii. It's a little bit more godlike. Look at this. Look at that. I can see why they've connected them. Great force of will is also seen in the face of the Pompeian god, but it will be dominated by alert and all-encompassing mind. The forehead expands and a broad arch, the eyes wide open, look out with full vision under sharply cut brows. Here we have no secret brooding. A powerful yet clearly defined and comprehensible personality is stamped upon features carved in bold, free lines. And this personality is not lost in mystical self-contemplation. The god is following with closest attention the course of events in some far distant place. Affairs that in the next moment may require his intervention. Excitement and expectancy are seen in the raised upper lip. The idea of this artist was the wise and powerful king, whose watchful and all-protecting eyes see to the furthest limits of his kingdom. Surely this variation of the Octoli type must have been conceived in a monarchical period, the period where the Greek world was ruled by the successors of Alexander. The Pomeranian god is more a sovereign. The Zeus of Octrili is more poetic, more divine. That's an interesting way to tell us about that statue. Because I think the comparison was really fun. That was a very good way to describe it. So now we're on to the Bascilla. The Bascilla at the southwest corner of the forum was the most magnificent and architecturally the most interesting building in Pompeii. Its construction and decoration point to the pre-Roman time, and there is also an inscription scratched on the stucco of the wall, dating from almost the beginning of the Roman colony. See Pomidius Dipilis was here on the 5th day before the nones of October in the consulship of Marcus Lepidus and Quintus Calutus, that is October 3rd, 878 BC. The purpose of the building is clearly indicated not only by its plan and the details of its arrangement, but also by the wood. Basilica scratched a number of times by idlers on the stucco of the outer wall, and at the right of the south entrance. So I just have this image of going to the library and then like scratching library into the wood everywhere. Just so historians know this was a library. This sure identification lends to the... No! Oh my god, no. We should troll historians. You should go... I, Briony Rose Smith, do not condone the destruction of public property. But also, if I did, it would be funny to go to, like, the town hall and then scratch library into things, and then the historians were like, wait, was this a town hall or a library? And they wouldn't know, and it would be great. It's like using a label maker to put label maker on it. Yes, it is! It's wonderful. I love the energy. This sure identification leads to the edifice a special significance. It is, without a doubt, the oldest example that we have of an important architectural type whose origin is lost in obscurity, but of which the derivative forms may still be recognized in the architecture of today. What the temple developed by the Greeks was to pagan antiquity that the basilica became to the Christian church. A type of dominating system of religious architecture. Pagan worship was individual. A narrow chamber sufficed for the image of the god and the requirements of religious service, but Christian worship was social, and its functions demanded a larger room. in which a congregation could be assembled. The religious architecture of the church therefore broke with the religious architecture of pagan antiquity and turned for its model to the basilica. What if we just write Briony approved on libraries? Please don't. I might get in trouble. Restaurants and other cool places. Future historians were like, why did Briony approve of all these buildings around the world? Who is this Briony who approved of all these buildings around the world? Low key, actually no, do it. Don't do it, but do it. I would love to confuse historians. That's a goal in life. I just want to confuse the historians. I shouldn't troll the historians, but it would be funny. Our knowledge of history of the basilica begins with the erection of the Basilica Porta in Rome by Canto the Elder in 184 BC. Other basilicas followed, and in Caesar's day a number stood about the Forum. Regarding its development prior to the time of Canto, only conjectures can be offered. The name basilica, basil-like stoa, which means the royal hall, points to a Greek origin. We should naturally look for the prototype of the Roman as well as the Pamanian structure in the capitals of the Alexandrian period and in the Greek colonies of Italy. But no no reference in literature comes to our aid. This superstition that the King's Hall, Bastilia Sota, in Athens, and the official residence of King Acheron, of King Archon, was the prototype of all basilicas, had little support to it. Our information in regard to the form of this building is quite inadequate, and the name alone warrants no positive conclusion. It is more probable that both the name and the architectural type came from the Royal Hall, one of the successors of Alexander. A basilica was a spacious hall which served as an extension of a marketplace, and was itself a certain sense covered market. It was not limited to a specific purpose. In general, whatever took place on the market square might take place in the basilica. The roof of which afforded protection against the weather. It was chiefly devoted, however, to business transactions and the administration of justice. The form is known partly from the remains of the basilicas in Rome, Basilica Julia, Basilica Ulpia, Basilica of Constantine, and in Africa, but more fully of the treatise of Virtuis, and the description of a basilica which he himself erected in Fano. According to these sources, the plan of a typical basilica is essentially that of the building before us. An oblong space is divided by columns into a broad central hall, and a corridor which runs around the four sides. The height of the columns in the typical basilica is equal to the width of the corridor, which is covered by a flat roof. The inner edge of this roof is carried by the enaptula above the columns. The main room is higher than the corridor. Above the entablature is a low wall on which there is a second row of columns. These carry the main roof and form a clerestory, the light being admitted through the intercolumnizations. The main hall and the corridor were devoted to trade. The dealerships perhaps occupied the former, while the latter the throngs of purchasers and it reminds me of like a con setup almost. Like I said, like a let's have a quick. Can I look at that closer? We can look at this a little closer. Let me get it up for you. There it is. Okay, so according to this, no, don't want it any bigger. So number 1 is the entrance. That's the corridor bit. Number 2 is the main room. Number 3, this is the tribunal. And number 4 is just rooms at the end of the tribunal. Now we know. There we go. I thought that looked weird for a minute there. The main hall and the corridor were devoted to trade. The dealerships. The dealers perhaps occupied the former, while the latter, the throngs of purchasers and idlers, moved freely about. The place set aside for the administration of justice, the tribunal, was ordinarily an abyss projecting from the rear end. In our basilica, however, in some others, it was a small oblong elevated room back of the central hall, towards which it opened in its whole length. No. Tribunal ball pit. Yay, the ball pit. Wait a minute. Right. Is the ball pit really bad? Is a ball pit really a punishment? Can I go in the ball pit? We will continue reading about the basilica next week. Maybe. Yes. Definitely next week. I don't know when next week. Some point next week. But for now, that is all I have for you. I will stop reading for now. I will be back tomorrow, so you don't have to wait long. We'll be back with Ace Attorney tomorrow. We need to find out who killed Mai, and it totally wasn't the crazy lady in the hotel room. That's going to be fun. There might be a couple less streams next week. I had a really good week last week for like free time, so we got a few more streams in. Next week is gonna go back to being a little bit quiet, unfortunately, but that's okay. I will still stream just as much as I can. Ace Attorney. Yeah, Ace Flag Attorney. Hello, Dread Excalibur. Goodbye, Dread Excalibur. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Thank you, everyone who lurked. Thank you, anyone who watched the VOD. Thank you to anyone who chats. I appreciate you coming, and I hope you enjoy my streams, no matter which way you decide to enjoy them. If you had not already, I would also highly appreciate it if you could leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are on the YouTubes. If you're on the Twitch, give the channel a cheeky follow. That would be lovely. We've been doing pretty well on Twitch. I'm really happy with it, and we've been doing pretty well on YouTube. If you could help me keep that up, that'd be great. If you'd like any other free way to support me, please share stuff about me, I guess, and join the Discord. Discord's always fun. And if you run out of ways to support me for free and you have some extra cash, there are ways to support me with money. Please do not feel pressured to do so, but if you have it, why not? There's YouTube membership where you can get emotes, exclusive streams, Discord channel, and merch discounts. There is the Patreon where you can get short stories, exclusive streams, merch discounts, free books. There is one more exclusive stream I need to do this week. I'm hoping to do it on Thursday. I'm not 100% on what I'm going to do, but it'll be something, and it'll be fun, I'm sure. There is my Kofi, where if you like the emotes that are currently being spammed in the chat, then you can commission me to make more. And there is the merch store where you can get ebooks, versions, copies of the books that I've written, bookmarks, a notebook, a pillow, and some stickers. So check that out. There's also going to be an audiobook very, 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 very soon. I'm going to be uploading it tomorrow to ACX. But yeah, so if you're interested in listening to me read a gender bend isekai called My Name is Princess Case, then keep an eye out on my socials and on Discord, because I'll be keeping you updated there. So it will be 6 hours of me reading with no mistakes and top tier voice acting. I must say, I'm actually very proud of myself for some of the voice acting. So look forward to that. But until then, yeah, le gasp. I will see you guys tomorrow. But for now, I had fun. I hope you had fun. This has been Briony Rose Smith, live in the Forbidden Library. Goodbye.